Hello and welcome to my extremely subjective review of Primal in 2024. Primal, also known as Saints Divine Demons in Japan, was released in March 2003 on PlayStation 2 by Sony and developed by Guerrilla Cambridge, formerly known as SCE Studio Cambridge. The developers of such games as Medieval 1 and 2, Little Big Planet, and before the studio shut down by Sony in 2017, Riggs Mechanized Combat League. In 2012, the game was re-released digitally for the PlayStation 3 as a part of the PS2 classics, and then in 2016 it was also made available on PlayStation 4. In order to promote the game, a small tie-in comic was created by Comax before the release of the game. The comic book was narrated by Scree, who gives a reader a small introduction to World of Mortalis, the Nexus, and the Four Realms of Oblivion.
Story.
The story of Primal puts you in the shoes of Jennifer Tate, an ordinary and unassuming girl that works as a waitress so that she can afford college. But immediately at the beginning of the game, Jennifer or Jen was attacked when leaving a nightclub with her boyfriend Louis, but some kind of monstrous creature or a demon. The attack leaves Jen unconscious and hospitalized, and this is when we are introduced to a second protagonist, a small gargoyle by the name of Scree. In order to prevent Jen from dying, Scree uses some kind of magic to separate Jen's spirit from her body. After which Jen agrees to leave the hospital and accompany Scree to the Nexus, which is where all other realms of Oblivion converge. Here is also where Jen learns that there is an internal struggle between primal forces of order and chaos, and that chaos is disrupting the balance by corrupting the other realms of Oblivion. From here, Jen and Scree travels to 4 different realms of Oblivion in order to remove chaos corruption and restore the balance. The main story of the game is divided between the Nexus, 2 Order-aligned realms called Solum and Aquis, and 2 Chaos-aligned realms called Aetha and Boika. Besides the overarching main story, each realm has its own contained story that doesn't necessarily connect to the main story of the game. Primal is a typical isekai story where the protagonist is transported to a different world. In this new world, the protagonists usually possess special abilities, knowledge, or the skill that makes them stand out. I like the good isekai with complex and interesting characters, and I can say that for the most part, Primal story have left me fully satisfied.
Worldbuilding.
Primal World is rich with mythology and intrigue, and does very good job at drawing player into its lore with engaging cutscenes and dialogue. Each Oblivion realm feels unique and well fleshed out. Each realm is inhabited by a different race of beings that have their own language, culture, architecture, technology, and more. The atmosphere in each realm is also very different, which makes all the realms stand out even more from each other.
Gameplay.
Primal is a single-player action-adventure game with 2 controllable characters, Jen and Scree. The player can instantaneously switch between Jen and Scree at any time. When you control one character, the other character is controlled by AI, which will do different things depending on the situation. When you directly control Scree, you'll be able to possess statues to solve puzzles or open a way forward. You can also climb walls, but you are not able to climb any wall, only specific walls that game arbitrarily decides. Scree is not used in combat, but he can assist Jen in other ways like siphoning energy from the dead enemies and crystals, which Jen can then transfer to herself if she gets injured in combat. When controlling Jen, you can transform into 4 different demonic forms, with each having its own combat style, as well as special abilities such as running fast, jumping high, slowing down time, and swapping between weapon types. Each demonic form has its own energy bar, which works as a health bar. If you get hit in combat while using a demonic form, you will lose some energy, which can be recovered by siphoning energy from Scree or spending an energy gem. Besides four demonic forms, Jen also have a human or spirit form, which, though weaker than the other forms, will regenerate energy naturally after a short time of not being hit. First demonic form you will get is called Ferai form, and in this form, while exploring the world, you will able to run faster and jump higher, and when you engage in combat, you get two claws to use as weapons. Second demonic form you get is called Undine form, and this is an aquatic form that will let you swim underwater and fight enemies underwater with some kind of electric whips. Third demonic form you get is called Wraith form, and in this form you can slow down time, which is mostly used to traverse the world. In combat, you will get a whip in one hand and a dagger in another. The last demonic form you get is called Jinn form, and this is primarily combat form, which gives you ability to use two fire blades, which can be fused together to create a large single blade. To be able to kill enemies in combat, you need to weaken enemies to the point where their hit points reaches zero, at which time a finishing move must be performed to kill the enemy. If you do not perform finishing move in time, the enemy will recover small portion of their health. When in combat, Gen will automatically lock onto the nearest enemy and you are not able to fight without being locked onto an enemy. This can be extremely frustrating and annoying, especially when you are fighting more than one enemy, which is something that you will be doing most of the time. You can change the target and lock onto a different enemy by pressing interact button, but this is very janky and inconsistent. Sometimes it will change the target immediately, and sometimes you have to press the button multiple times before game locks onto a different target. In combat, you can use light attacks by pressing left and right bumper, or heavy attacks by holding left and right bumper for a second or two. You can also perform combos by chaining attacks with left and right hand. Besides attacking, you can also block and even parry enemy attacks. In theory, this should have been an interesting combat system, but because it has been implemented very poorly, it feels anything but. All attack animations are stiff and hitboxes are very inconsistent. Even though you have four different forms with different combat styles and weapons, they all feel the same and play the same. When it comes to enemies, each realm has its own unique enemies, but in the end, there are really two different type of enemies, and that is humanoid enemies with weapons and beast or monster-like enemies. I somewhat enjoyed fighting humanoid enemies, but very much disliked fighting beast or monster enemies, and absolutely hated fighting all underwater enemies.
Graphics.
Graphically, Primal showcases impressive visuals for its time, with detailed environments and character designs that create a vivid and immersive world. The art direction is particularly noteworthy, with its gothic and dark fantasy aesthetic, adding depth and atmosphere to the game. Even though the art style leans more towards cartoony than realistic, it still manages to capture dark atmosphere of the game without being too lighthearted or whimsical. The realm that incorporates gothic art design the most is Aetha. Considering that game was released on PlayStation 2 more than 20 years ago, graphical fidelity of the game has not aged too badly, but of course, cartoony art style has a lot to do with it.
Sound.
Ambient sound design is amazing. You can clearly hear everything from your own footsteps to different weather effects like rain or wind to even underwater ambient noise. Even though ambient sound is great and contributes a lot to the atmosphere of the game can be too quiet at times because there is barely any music in the game. This is especially noticeable when you are not in combat and are exploring the world. The weapon sound is nothing too amazing, apart from Whip, which sounds great. The voice acting, while being quite good, occasionally lacks the depth and nuance that the story demands.
Game time and price.
Primal is not a long game compared to the games today, but the game is well structured and paced. To complete the main story without doing anything else will take about 15 hours. But if you wish to gather all the collectible cards in the game, then that will take you around 20 hours. The price for the game in 2024 is not high compared to the newer games, but it can vary depending on if you want to buy a physical copy or a digital one. Because originally game was only released on PlayStation 2, the only physical copy available is the PlayStation 2 one, and you can get it for around $20. The digital version of the game can be bought on PlayStation Store for around $10.
Availability.
Primal was originally only released on PlayStation 2, but if you do not own or do not wish to dust off your old PlayStation 2, then there are still some other ways you can play the game in 2024. Because the game was released digitally as a part of the PS2 classics, you can also play the game on PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and even PlayStation 5. Game is available for purchase on PlayStation Store, but it is also included in PlayStation Plus Premium subscription. Beyond the game being available on almost all PlayStation consoles, you can also play Primal on a PC by using a PlayStation 2 emulator.
Summary.
When all is said and done, Primal is an interesting game with a unique setting and a great atmosphere. I like most of the characters in the game, with Elizabeth being my favorite. Main story is well crafted and intriguing, but I enjoyed even more the self-contained stories in each realm, with the exception from Aquis, which I didn't care for. The gameplay, on the other hand, left a lot to be desired because of the bad combat and uninspiring puzzles and platforming. Even though I enjoy my time with the game, for the most part, the gameplay does bring score down to 6 out of 10. Despite its glaring problems with combat, Primal remains a testament to the creativity and ambition of its developers, offering a rich and immersive experience that stand out in the action-adventure genre. This will be it for my review of Primal, so thank you everybody for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.